and the devil is going on in New York. I honestly had no idea what to name the show today, so I just named the first thing that came into my mind. The left owns the Democrats now. What went on in New York last night is flabbergasting. I mean, holy cannoli. We're gonna get some great data on who is voting where. We're going to get into it. It's The Ordinary American. I'm your host, Paul Sarkis. I thought yesterday was darkness. I'm not going to be dark. I'm going to try to pull myself out of the darkness today because every day things change. So we don't know. So the first thing I'm going to do to pull myself up is I'm putting up Donald J. Trump. He put this out this morning. Look at the time, 2:38 a.m. America the Beautiful will never be a communist country. Amen, brother. Okay, we talked a lot yesterday. Leftism, scourge on humankind for well over now 100 years. Death and suffering wherever it goes. There's no example of success ever. It is always death and suffering. And by the way, it's not mild either. It's not like, well, it almost worked and, we had a good run and it just didn't work for more. No, it always results in death and suffering. Why? Because leftism, fascism, socialism, communism, I'm not going to get into a debate. Somebody in a comment section wanted to debate the differences. There is no practical difference between all three. They're leftism. They are categorized or epitomized by single party rule. Stop me if this sounds familiar. Single party rule, no deviation in voice, total state control of everything as much as they can. It's the antithesis of individual freedom and liberty. Individual freedom and liberty can't exist in a leftist run community. What does that sound like? That is the Democrat Party. That's certainly California. It's certainly New York. If leftism worked, people would go there. Why do people keep coming to America? This great tourism. I'm gonna have to play this early because I can't. I'm too dark right now. I'll probably pull up this screenshot in a minute. But the Europeans have found tremendous love in America during this World Cup. They keep on posting these unbelievable scenes from various parts of our beautiful country, whether it be the Japanese enjoying barbecue for the first time, or let me see.
So prior to the shutdown in 2020,
this is a picture of people waiting to get into a Buc-ee's. And it comes from, I think it's a German guy who posted it. And he said, and it's in Arizona. He's like, I wouldn't probably wait in this, but when I got in there, it was awesome. This is America. This is making me smile. I'm coming out of my darkness here. Okay? This is awesome. If you haven't been to a Buc-ee's, I'd never even heard of Buc-ee's till I moved to the South. Okay? And then fortunately, around where we live, it is.
Anytime something new was going to come out, I knew I wanted. I knew I was going to have to camp out. So what I do.
Something's happening with my sound. I can't figure out what that is. So let me see what I can do here.
Is me and my friends, or sometimes even.
What is going on? Technical trouble, guys. Not sure how we're going to handle this. Buc-ee's is opening. The left sucks. Okay? These are the Europeans coming here and saying, this is amazing. Buc-ee's is beautiful. Look at these people waiting in line. Okay? Donald Trump is telling us the left will not take over America.
I would have to do it by myself.
I don't know where that sound is coming from. So that is a little bit of a problem. And I can't seem to figure it out. But I'm gonna keep going and see what we can do. Okay. Mamdami supported 3 candidates they won last night. All 3 are essentially anti-American. Whatever Mamdami wants to convince you of, he's anti-American. How do they phrase it right now? They're phrasing it in anti-Semitism. If you haven't heard of, where is she? There she is. Badia Unger Sargon. She wrote a book recently, very recently, which I have not read yet, but I intend to. She wrote a book called The Jews and the Left. And she wrote an article, and we're going to just get right into it. By the way, we are going to get to some Promethean action. We are going to get to Donald Trump and do some film study because I need some of what both of those groups offer. And today we're also going to play something from the great Professor St. Ange because his dry sense of humor in some of his videos is spectacular. I tried to play this a couple of days ago and I couldn't find the time. All right. Badia Unger Sargon writes this after last night. All three focused their campaign. Those are the three people that Mamdami supported. Crazy, lunatic lefties. By the way, all crazy, lunatic Islamist supporters. All three focused their campaigns on the hatred of Israel and the Jews who supported, which they share with New York's mayor. So much so, the revelers chanted, "Free, free Palestine." Free, free Palestine in New York. In New York City. Brad Lander, by the way, he can call himself whatever he wants. He now is a full supporter of Islam and the far left. Claire Valdez, and I like saying this name, Daria-Liza Chevalier. Daria-Liza Chevalier. All one with the highly educated white progressives that make up Mamdami's base. What in the devil, people? What don't you get? If you're so educated, study, bro, study, brah. The left sucks. They kill you all the time. All of the so-called equality, they never deliver. It always goes to the top. Always. It never goes anywhere else. Yasser Arafat, for those of you who are too young to know, he was sort of one of the original terrorists in sort of the mid to late 1900s. Basically, the Palestinian Authority, the PLO. He was a billionaire by the time he died, while his people were starving, and he used his people to gain cover from the press and from the left and from the Democrats in America to say, look how horrible Israel is. And he died a billionaire. He didn't make anything. He was just a terrorist. He stole money. What is going on? Chevalier won a district that includes the Bronx, actually lost the Bronx, part of the district, by 30 points. She also lost predominantly Black and Hispanic areas and lower income areas in the district, winning higher income, college-educated voters. Okay, so this is that one, Daria-Liza Chevalier. This is her district. Let's take some good news. Lower income people, smart, should be smarter. 52% is, it should be 92%. Okay, Black and Hispanics. Okay, waking up. Not surprised to see Hispanics at 56%. We've talked before about how well Donald Trump did in border counties, not only as a compared from 16 to 20 to 24, but in sort of gross terms. Okay, he did extremely well. Why? Because even the illegals understand that as soon as they get in, shut the door behind me and my wages will go up. It is not more complicated than that. Even the illegals understand that. Okay? That's why he does better than people think in those Hispanic districts. In the Black districts, I talk about this all the time. Black Americans. Newsflash now. All of the progress you thought you were making in politics and political power, you thought you'd marshal all of your communities, get behind one party for 50, 60 years, and you'd get a lot of power. Hey, what'd you get for that? You got your schools destroyed, so your kids are not being taught how to read, write, or do math at grade level. If I were a racist, the first thing I would want to do is destroy the schools. Oh, the Democrats did that. They are the party of racism. So all of your efforts, they also, by the way, allowed your communities to become usually the most crime infested in any city. As we're seeing once Trump took over DC and Memphis and some of New Orleans, crime is a choice. Crime is a choice. We do not have to have crime. So Black Americans, as you keep on voting for Democrats, You keep on guaranteeing you're breaking your future generations into the political jailhouse. Now, what are you facing? Now you're facing the notion that the left-wing Islamists have totally usurped all of your power in the party, completely. You aren't going to be an afterthought unless you go along with them, unless you go along with the left-wing Islamists. Okay? This is the point that many people have tried to make. Jason Riley's one of them, Thomas Sowell's another. The notion that building political power by trying to get into a party like that and having having power can lead to your community doing well is the same fallacy that leftism is going to help everybody in its equality. And they give the data, they look and they say, look at the Irish immigrants. They had tremendous power in various cities around the country, but overall, they weren't doing great politically. They contrast that with Japanese, Chinese, Korean families and communities who never really gained strong political power. Certainly not like the Irish or the Black Americans. And they did and have done tremendously well. Okay, so Black Americans, great, you're waking up. That's what this tells us. You're waking up, but not great because you're not waking up fast enough. You've now 100% lost the Democrat Party to the Islamicists. So now you kind of have no choice. You need to leave the party. You need to, if you can, find a way to appreciate the greatness of Donald Trump, who's delivering things like fixing your neighborhoods in particular in cities that you largely control, like DC, and your school systems. Okay, but certainly you need to vote for Republicans. Just imagine, I said this the other day, tomorrow, every single Black American votes Republican. What happens? Two things happen. The Democrat Party collapses, one. Two, your neighborhoods change dramatically for the better. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Hispanics are on their way. All right, I want to play, if I can find it, there it is. Van Jones, who is a Black pundit, worked for a few days, I think, for Obama, but couldn't last. There was a problem. Here we go. He even said that the establishment in the Democrat Party is Dunsky. Okay, listen to this.
Do you think Democrats not in New York City should be learning from this?
Well, first of all, New York City matters because the two most exciting left-wing candidates are here, AOC and Mamdami, but also this is the stronghold for the establishment. Schumer.
Do you see how he's kissing the butt of the leftists? This is how it always goes. If you look back at the history of Europe, post-World War I into World War II, the elites, the elected class, the expert class, the so-called intellectuals, they always side with the leftists for two reasons, my theory. One, because what leftists do, single party rule, is they take control. So all those, the elites, the elected class, the experts in there are the intellectuals. They think they're smarter than the average German, average European, average American. They think they should be in control. What the left says is you should be in control. You're smarter than they are. That's one thing. The second thing is they usually have something to lose. They usually have a little bit of wealth or a little bit of status or something, and they don't want to lose it. They're afraid. This is Van Jones right here. He's saying the most, whatever he said, the most interesting part. He's being a kiss ass, okay? Because he knows he needs to stay relevant in this pundit Democrat world. And he is the one, when he talks here about the establishment being essentially run out, that's him.
And Hakeem Jeffries. This is a battle between the establishment and this insurgency, and the roof is collapsing on the Democratic Party establishment tonight. If Mamdami gets a hat trick, 3 out of 3,
which he did,
this is a new era for the Democratic Party, and you can't write off New York City because this is the place where both it's a power center for the establishment and the insurgency, and they're going head to head tonight. And right now, this is no longer a movement. This is a movement and a machine at the same time. There's just no way to sugarcoat this. If Mamdami pulls off a hat trick,
which he
there's a
did,
new era in Democratic Party politics.
Well, and if you're a moderate Democrat who's on the election, who's on the ballot,
who are the moderate Democrats? Where are they? That's the blue dog Democrats. They've been gone for a long time. She's a retard. The moderate Democrats. Schumer, a moderate. Goldman, who lost last night, a moderate.
This November, Van, I mean, they're all going to get asked about the positions that we're hearing from these other fellow Democrats.
Well, look, I think, from our frontline Democrats will be able to make their case for themselves. I think they'll be able to do okay. We got a lot of national security Democrats in other parts of the country, but this is a big deal tonight. And I think that look, I don't know what you want me to say here. This is a straight up battle between the establishment and the insurgency, and the establishment is getting its butt kicked tonight in New York City.
I don't know what to say. That's what he says. I don't know what to say. Yeah, you don't know what to say. You guys sold your party, you retards, to the left. But as Donald Trump tells us, America will never be a communist country. All right, listen, I say this often, and certainly on Fridays, which is Forgiveness Fridays. Please tune in. It's the last segment of the week that we do. I do it for me as much as for you. But for me, I need to always find forgiveness. Anybody who's trapped in the Democrat Party, whose brain has been fried and who can't remove themselves, if you're a Jewish American and you are still voting for the Democrats, look what you are voting for. Look what you are voting for. They hate you. They're going to hurt you. You're giving them power. If you don't want to vote for a Republican, the way that you find your way out of that is forgiveness. What do I mean by that? Listen, you don't have to change your policies to forgive, say, Donald Trump. If you have TDS and you think he's the devil, is he more of a devil than that? The people that hate the Jews? Come on. I don't think so. He loves Israel. He's working with Israel. He's laying a boundary down, so it's America first, but he loves Israel. His daughter is Jewish by conversion. Okay, if you're a Jewish American and you've been taught to hate the Republicans, you can always choose forgiveness. And you can just forgive them, and then maybe you can find your path to vote for a Republican. Because if you don't, look what you're getting. This is New York City. New York City is a place where there is a huge Jewish population. This is not, I don't know where, Kansas, which I imagine doesn't have a very large Jewish population. Maybe I'm wrong. Sorry, Kansans, if I got that wrong. But you can't afford to be this naive and be deceived by this. The left always is death and destruction. Single party rule, no individual freedom and liberty. The state controls everything, healthcare, etc. Okay, and by the way, we talked about this yesterday. It comes up a lot now because of the fraud and theft of our tax dollars. How'd they get here? They stole our money and they stole our elections. If we keep on allowing our tax dollars, and despite the great work by J.D. Vance and the fraud squad, which is doing great, and we're getting some of it, you can see, particularly Islamic communities, these people are still getting our tax dollars. It used to be when America was growing rapidly in the mid 1800s and forward, it wasn't until very late in the 1900s that these, certainly illegals, never until more recently, but immigrants even got any money from the government. If you watch, there's the show 1883 and 1923. Those are two shows in the I'm drawing a blank, Yellowstone world. In 1923, they have a scene for some of the immigrants trying to come through Ellis Island, and it's horrific. You should watch it. But they're not getting any government subsidies. They're not getting phones. They're not getting housing. And what Trump is doing effectively, slowly, but effectively, is he is taking away all of those perks. Okay, he's slowly taking away those perks. I mentioned yesterday we had a big win at the DC Circuit Court where we won 2-1, which Trump can now speed up the deportations nationwide. Okay, good news. We'll see if it gets appealed. It probably will. Okay, Look, New York, you got to remove your head from your hindquarters, okay? Quickly. You are giving away your city. You are giving away your city, and it is not going to be pretty. Okay, I want to play. Where is he? I want to play the great Professor St. Ange. He does a daily Monday through Friday video, usually based on economics, but not always. And it's obviously always political. He did one, I think this is from Monday, and there's some humor in this that I just think is spectacular. Okay, public schools lose 1.5 million kids. Why? Black Americans wake up because the schools suck and they don't teach your kids anything. Or listen to Professor St. Ange.
Public schools are imploding in performance and attendance as parents seek alternatives that do not turn their kids into gay Democrats who can't read. Fortunately for the teachers' unions that public schools are built to serve, the one area that is growing is budget. The $1 trillion public schools charge to turn your kids into gay Democrats. Since pre-COVID, public school and
it was that part that I loved, the comedy. It's just dry humor. Turn them into gay Democrats. Okay? But they do it with our tax dollars. We've shown the graphs. We're going to play a little bit more of this, but we've shown the graphs before. Attendance, enrollment in public schools is essentially flat since 1970. I think it's up maybe 8%. But when you look at the money spent per student in both teacher salaries and administration, it's way up. What does that tell you? They are stealing our money to funnel it through the teachers' unions and the school systems that make it back to Democrats in the form of contributions and work. Work. They get those people to come and be advocates for them. Why? Because they're told, hey, you're not going to get as much money if you don't vote for the Democrats.
enrollment has fallen in America by 1.5 million. Truancy has grown from 1 in 7 kids to almost 1 in 4.
That's not
Test
good.
scores fell by nearly a full grade level. So we lost 30 years of progress in 4th grade reading, while 12th grade is the worst ever. Yet spending per student rose from $13,000 a kid to $18,000, suggesting the only thing public schools know how to graduate is a budget increase. So the background is progressives ran a 100-year campaign to capture education and hand it to communist teachers unions. Murray Rothbard actually wrote a book on this takeover called Education Free and Compulsory.
Great book to read. What Peter is talking about here is right on the money. It's the same thing, and it ties back into the left. They knew they weren't going to be able to have a bloody revolution in America. It would never work. But what they also knew is that humans, we talked about this yesterday, humans react to resentment and anger. We're very susceptible to resentment and anger. Any of us know this. We can get perseverating in our head about something. Somebody did us wrong. Somebody cut us off in traffic. Somebody said something and I wanted to respond. And I don't like that person because they're doing something I don't like. The left, that's oppressor and oppressed. The left figured this out. They snuck their way into our universities. With the Frankfurt School, they started to teach and it went down and it made its way into the teachers' unions and into the schools. By the way, he doesn't mention it here, but we've shown before, New York City spends $40,000 plus per student for worse test scores than ever.
The punchline being government schools was never about reading, writing, and arithmetic. Never. It was an intentional strategy to ideologically capture the kids of, in particular, Catholics, who at the time did not see the government as a crusade. They just wanted the government to leave them alone. The progressives figure they're stuck with Catholics, but they have their kids too brainwashed into foot soldiers of the progressive revolution. So reading and math was the sales brochure, indoctrination was the product, and teachers' unions made it happen in spades. One study by Cardis found public schools swing kids 20 points Democrat compared to private and parochial church schools, at which point they're, of course, sent to a 4-year indoctrination center called a university to...
I would just say that all private schools are not religious schools. Parochial schools are religious schools. But private schools sometimes are as left-leaning as public schools because all the teachers go to the same accreditation type events and all the schools get accredited through similar places and they run the same type of workshops. Then they take people over, okay? And you get weak heads of schools that are afraid to stand up to the teachers. And you end up with leftist-leaning private schools too. This is why somebody like me says that part of the solution is take all of the money that's going to education right now, all of it, all of the taxpayer money. There's no other money, all of the taxpayer money. I was just looking at my man Bruiser. He's here in the room. And send it directly to parents. Bypass the entire education industrial complex completely. You will starve them for money the same way that the big time Scotty Bessent, the best Treasury Secretary of all time, starving the Iranians of money, starving the grifters trying to steal our money and give it to other countries. You can no longer send money back home if you're on government assistance. I digress, but that was important. Okay, same thing.
Finish off the brainwash at the low price of $150,000. Sadly, turning education into indoctrination hits Democrats worst, especially inner city Democrats. Last year, fully 23 Baltimore schools had precisely 0 students proficient in math.
Black Americans. How many of those schools in Baltimore do you think are predominantly black? You are voting to condemn your next generation to not being able to compete because they can't read, write, or do arithmetic in a way that allows them to compete. That is not a mistake. It is part of the plan. They want you dependent. This is the systemic racism that's talked about. Trump is not a racist. Republicans are not racist. The Democrat system that controls your school is racist. And they've been at it a very long time. 0 kids, even by chance somebody would pass the test.
Math. Detroit, 96% of students lack proficiency in math. 95% cannot even read, but they do know their demi-genders.
And how many of the kids in that study in Detroit are from the black communities? Guys, you cannot afford to keep on just doing what you were always told to do or what your dad did. I saw Ice Cube the other day talking, and he's not allowed. He was on Tucker. And Tucker's so far off the reservation with his anti-Israel Jew hatred stuff that I can barely take it anymore. But Ice Cube I like to listen to. And Ice Cube was talking about how he's not welcome on The View. They won't let him on. Why? Because of his views. And I wasn't trying to use that word or that pun. Okay? Take his lead. There's plenty of strong and smart black Americans who have broken free of the Democrat Party. Wesley Hunt's one in Congress, but there are many others. You can't afford to allow your kids to keep on going to these schools, and you can't afford to keep on allowing these schools in your neighborhood to be like this.
Meanwhile, school budgets in both are almost half above the national average. Now, it all sounds dire, but there is good news. 15 overwhelmingly Republican states, covering a third of all kids, have passed school choice bills where the money follows the kid and practiced parents. Meanwhile, parents are pulling out. Since COVID, the share of parents using private schools is up, while the share homeschooling doubled, including homeschool co-ops that amount to the traditional one-room schoolhouse with parents calling the shots. All encouraging, but it still leaves 84% of the next generation stuck in government day prison. So what's next? Brought to you by
government day prison. I love it. Okay, I'm gonna stop that there. Just watching the time. This is a little known fact, and certainly Obama doesn't like to publicize it. I mention it as often as possible, so as many people as possible will pass this on to other people. One of the very first things that Obama did when he got into office in 2009, he was elected in 2008. One of the very first things he did when he got into office in 2009 was he took away essentially the school choice program. It was a scholarship program in DC for kids who were in schools that were performing below expectations. Excuse me? Yeah, you heard that right. A predominantly black program, because DC is a predominantly black city, There was a scholarship program for black students who were in schools that were failing so they could go to other schools of the choice of the parents. Obama stopped it. Why? Because he was with the teachers union. He was not with the black community. Why on earth would anybody take away money from the parents who can send their kids then to any good school that they can get themselves into? That was cruel. Okay, that was cruel. That was one of the very first, look it up. Don't believe me, go check it out. Very first things he did when he got into office. Just brutal. All right, I want to play a little Trump. I love watching Trump's press conferences or when he talks to the press. First of all, he talks to the press all of the time, not some of the time. It's a constant dialogue with the American people, either through the press or directly on Truth Social, which we're going to get to, I think, if we have time. All right, he's on a plane, he's going to Pennsylvania, and somebody's asking a question. Let me see if I teed this up.
We're making a deal with them, and we'll see how that all goes. And right now, as you probably heard yesterday, we had 19 barrels of oil, 19 million barrels of oil come off, and that's the biggest in the history of the Strait, the Hormuz Strait. Our stock market is through the roof, and oil prices are tumbling. We actually hit for a moment today. In fact, I think it's going to break it, $70 a barrel. That's
it broke it today.
Than we were when we started, and it's been amazing. And the big thing is, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
What's on your agenda for your meeting tomorrow with senators at the lunch about the Save America Act?
Well, we're just going to talk about Save America. We have to pass the Save America Act, which is voter ID, which is proof of citizenship, etc.
Of course we do.
We have to pass it. So we're going to have a talk about that and many other things. A lot of good relations.
Mr. President, the Senate Majority Leader, John Schumer, has told you many times he doesn't believe that they have the vote to pass it.
He's a leader. John's a leader. That's what being as a leader is about. Look, we have to be able to get proof of citizenship when you vote. Otherwise, we don't have elections. We have to be able to get voter ID. So John is a leader, and hopefully he can get the votes.
Mr. President, on Iran, the Iranians are saying there's no scheduled visit for the IAEA inspectors. Is that part of your agreement?
They're wrong. They're wrong. They know they're wrong. They told us inside, and we have it down, 100% inspections. And if they were right, I'd cancel the meetings right now.
That's one of the points I wanted to show. I want to show just he's so open. He's talking to everybody. He's answering any questions. The Iran thing is total nonsense. Destroyed their military, destroyed their nuclear capabilities, and essentially they're all dead. Whatever he talks about, they're on their third string or their fifth string, and nobody wants to be president. Okay? That's entirely different than what Obama did. Let them keep their military, let them keep their nukes, got some kind of a quasi promise from them that was not real, and then they cheated as far as the testing went with the IAEA. Okay? So it's not close. It's just a stupid talking point. Okay? The other thing to keep in mind is it matters who the president is. Obama was famous for putting that red line to the Russians in Syria, and then they crossed the red line, and Obama was like, oh, okay, I guess, I'll let you do that. That's weak. Okay? Trump follows through. Everybody believes him. So when he talks about, in this particular case, when he talks about we're going to watch them, and if they were to do that, I would either back out or I'll bomb them, everybody knows that that's true. Let's just watch a few more seconds of this, and then I want to get to Promethean Act.
Mr. President, when will those inspectors actually be on the ground?
At the appropriate time. There's no rush. But the reflecting pool looks fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I enjoyed it. So it's all being fixed. But it's a shame. So I understand 5 or 6 people are arrested.
Yep.
The Interior Department can refer to you. It's actually hard to build it. Nobody.
All right. Trump, the best president. One thing I do want to mention, because he mentioned jail, a little diversion. Antifa people I think it was in Texas. There was, 8 or 10 of them caught for attacking an ICE facility. There was a trial, and they were found guilty of committing terrorism against this ICE facility. The first one was sentenced, I think, yesterday or the day before. He was sentenced to 100 years in prison. 100 years in prison. Okay? I doubt very much that the handlers or the money people or the people at the top level of Antifa or wherever they're getting their bricks and their other things, said to everybody, hey, listen, there is some risk. You might go to jail for 20 years. Do you still want to do this? They didn't say that. Okay? They didn't say that. And now they're going to jail for 100 years. And the other people are looking at 50, 60 years. These are obviously, this is not slap on your wrist time. Good. That's what we need. This will ripple through because people will start to say, whoa, wait a second. You know, I might be pissed at my parents, or I might be pissed at Trump, or I got TDS, but am I going to risk going to jail for 100 years? That's a whole different kettle of fish. You know, it's like, that's not, they're not real revolutionaries. Not, if you watch Godfather 2, they're not Pantangeli. They aren't going to kill themselves for the cause. Okay? And we're starting to see some of this. We're starting to see this with the corrupted elections with people who get arrested. We're seeing it now with the Antifa stuff. We're seeing it in a lot of the fraud stuff. We're going to see some of these people start to talk. Why? Because when you have the decades you have that everybody got to get away with this stuff like it was playtime, like, oh, you know, you can rage against the machine and, you know, maybe you'll get a slap on the wrist, but nothing bad. Yeah, it's not like that anymore. Now you're going to go away. Okay, that's serious business. Now, let's move over to Susan Kokinda at Promethean Action. If you've watched the show at all, you know the Promethean Action is where you learn how to read the Matrix. Okay? The general premise is the American system, which is that we make sure that we control our complete important supply chain, food, medicine, technology, rare earth minerals, for example, that we are starting to produce. So when everybody said, well, China controls all of those, not anymore. In that press conference, I couldn't find it. Trump talks about how we're producing our own steel now, more than Japan for the first time since 1990s. Okay, the American system, you got to make all of that your own so that you're not relying on anybody. Then what do? You support strategic initiatives within those worlds through the government supporting those areas, not through the corruption of the left with the green scams, but through things like the investment in Intel, or there's a bunch of these investments we've been over before in these various important industries, rare earth minerals, et cetera, by allowing them to dig and by removing the impediments, not at the detriment of the people, to support and help the people. Okay, and Susan Kokinda now, in this beginning part, she's going to talk a little bit about Kevin Warsh at the Fed. So it's the other side of it. It's the sort of the domestic money side of it. Listen to what she says.
In his inaugural press conference as Federal Reserve Chairman, Kevin Warsh said something shocking.
I don't believe that we have a cruel choice. I don't share the view that was expressed a few generations ago that Federal Reserve chairmen show up at a podium like this and say, you got to choose. You're going to have to decide whether you're willing to tolerate higher inflation to put more people at work. I don't believe in that. What I believe is if we do our job, we can make strong growth, low prices, and strong employment mutually compatible.
Did you catch that? The new chairman of the Federal Reserve does not believe in cruel choices.
The Phillips
This
curve.
is not the normal language of a central banker. When Warsh rejected the cruel choice, he was rejecting the Phillips curve.
Phillips curve.
For 60 years, every economist agreed on this iron rule. To stop inflation, you have to throw Americans out of work or suppress their wages. Last week, Kevin Warsh said that rule is a lie, and almost everybody missed it.
That is critically important when you want to understand what Trump is doing. And for 60 years, very long, the idea was that growth was scary and would cause too much inflation. And that the antidote was, you won't be surprised, not to throw out the people at the top of the food chain, but the people in the middle and the bottom of the food chain. Lower their wages. How? You bring in illegal aliens. Or you bring in legal aliens and keep the wages down. What did I say at the beginning of the show? Every illegal knows that when I go to Home Depot, if you're from Southern California, you know Home Depot is where the illegals go to get day work. If I go there on a day where tons of new people came in the day before, I'm not going to make much money and I might not even get hired. If there's nobody coming in, my wages are going to be higher and I'll get work. Okay. The Phillips curve was essentially saying we can starve the middle and lower class in terms of job and wages, all under the guise of we're stopping inflation. Not true.
Because they were busy trying to read the tea leaves on interest rates. Well, they're wrong. I'm Susan Kokinda, and I've tracked the Federal Reserve and the British liberal financial system for decades. Here's what I'm going to cover today: how Warsh just killed the cruelty doctrine that said Americans must suffer to fight inflation. Second, how the Trump administration is outflanking the money masters by unleashing new credit institutions. And finally, the part nobody is connecting: the real engine of American wealth, the secret weapon the empire cannot compete with. So
I'm going to try to skip ahead a little bit because it's such good. She's so smart. But I am going to just sort of preview it and say the creativity she's talking about it there at the end. That is not, hey, nobody has to work, universal basic income, go and become a poet. That is, Elon is the epitome of this. When you have a relatively free society, when you have relatively few roadblocks in your way, when you can have access to capital, when you can have access to people either like you or like-minded or with the skills you need to build the things you want to build. We saw how there were welders for SpaceX who had made $1 gazillion because they started welding when SpaceX started and they got stock options, okay, or stock as compensation. With Elon's creativity or with anybody's creativity, you can have it unleashed when you have individual freedom and liberty, when you have generally speaking, a rule of law that works, that people can, that have an expectation of consistency in, okay? That's what she's talking about. Let me just see if I can get a little bit more of this in here. The old system was a choke chain. Oh, by the way, the other thing she's talking about is the financialization. We saw this with the Straits of Hormuz. As soon as the straits got closed, what did Lloyd's of London do? Lloyd's of London is a big insurance company in Britain, a big tool of the globalists and the neocons. They said, we're not going to supply insurance anymore to go through the straits. They wanted to show us. They wanted to crush Trump. What did Trump have done? The United States Treasury said, we'll do it. We'll guarantee those shipments.
Oh, this rule has a name, and it's called the Phillips curve. In plain English, it says job growth and economic expansion cause inflation. There is a fixed trade-off between inflation and employment, and you've got to trade one against the other. That's the cruel choice. But ask yourself, when has real progress ever made things more expensive? Every time we've built something, a better machine, a faster process, the cost of everything affected by that falls. Now, the Phillips curve insists on the opposite. So which one is lying, the rule or your own eyes?
Yeah,
but they want you to think that that rule is a law of economics, and that's the lie. Because all it is a...
Think about big screen TVs. I'm old enough to remember when they were thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay, not anymore. Not anymore. Why? Because they get cheaper over time. As a side note, we won't get into it today, this is a big piece of the argument for Bitcoin, freedom money. I'm just going to speed ahead and see what I can find here to share because she's so brilliant.
The real economy, the part that actually produces food, housing, machinery, the things that make society work. That's supposed to be subordinated to the money. Now, Warsh threw that idea under the bus as well when he dispensed with the practice of forward guidance. That's where the Federal Reserve Chair and members of the FOMC tell markets what to expect in terms of future monetary policy. Now, the Fox News business correspondent got very nervous about Warsh dropping his forward guidance.
Watch this.
Lawrence with Fox Business. So if you don't give a lot of ongoing forward guidance, won't the markets have more volatility?
I think financial markets perform best when they react to incoming data. I think the financial markets work less efficiently when they ask a question, how will the Federal Reserve react to that incoming information? The more that markets are paying attention to what's happening in the real economy, deciding what's good data and what's less good data, the more financial markets can price what they believe is the most likely and what are the tail risks.
So the Federal Reserve Chairman just told the markets to listen to the real economy, not to a prophecy delivered by a monetary oracle of Delphi. If you're beginning to get...
Okay, what does that sound like to you? To me, that sounds like Kevin Warsh is saying, I want to make the Federal Reserve less important, and I want to make the market less dependent on it. Everybody else has wanted to make it more dependent. Why? It's a power base. It becomes a big, powerful position. Now, he didn't say he wants to get rid of it, but it would not surprise me if that's the angle that he starts to go. But what he did say is essentially, the market's got to do its own business. Don't try to listen to all of us trying to figure out what we're thinking. We don't need to interpret the interpretation. It's a little dry, but it's important because 1913, we talk a lot. 16th Amendment, income tax. 17th Amendment, popular election of senators. Federal Reserve created. Read up about Jekyll Island and the Federal Reserve, and your mind will explode. Total corruption, money printing. Money printing inflates away the purchasing power of the dollar. It goes to the great benefit of the people closest to the money printing, Lloyds of London, the financial society, the elites, the elected class, etc. And less or none as you go down the chain to more working class people. The Phillips curve is dead, which is great news. The economy now is going to be based on manufacturing. It's happening. Trump talks about it. Kevin Warsh is also saying we're going to decrease the importance of everybody focusing on the Federal Reserve. Susan Kukinda and Barbara Boyd, I hit some Barbara Boyd, but it's late and we're going to have to get going. You have to listen to them. They're great interpreters. They are showing you how to read the matrix, okay? All right, there's a ton going on. I'm trying to stay out of the darkness with all this leftism. This show was born from wanting to be an anti-leftist show, which means we are anti-Democrat. We are trying to turn as many people away from that leftism. Why? Because it's death and destruction. And on this show is a firm and strong ally of Israel, just like America is. We do not go for any of this Jew-hating stuff that we get from Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and others, okay? It doesn't mean that Israel runs us. We already see that that's not true. Trump is a strong leader, but they are an ally, and they do have a right to exist. And all this other stuff, which is just old-fashioned anti-Semitism, has no place in the MAGA movement or in the Republican Party. In the Democrat Party, they're going full-on Jew hatred. You no longer have the luxury to sit back and vote for Democrats and kind of say, well, you know, my dad voted for Democrats. No. You've got to choose. Now you're voting for hatred. You are voting for leftism. All right. We're going to be back here tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Hopefully, a little bit lighter. Hopefully, maybe with a little more forgiveness in my heart for the leftists. But you don't have to let them control things. You can forgive them. It doesn't mean be a punching bag. As the great Father Mike Schmitz says, I'm praying for you. Please pray for me. I'm rooting for you. Please root for me. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, by the way, like, subscribe, and follow.